Okay, good afternoon. Thursday we're going to do the Tai Chi Paradigm for Parkinson's. We're going to run through the warm-ups as usual, and we try to build some coordination. Learn to let go of something, tension in the body, and understand what the process is in learning with the material in this class. So there's a lot of material, but it's not a rush. You just take your time. The content is actually stored, it's in the cloud or wherever it is, and the thing is, you have access to it. And if you go to YouTube and subscribe, that's actually going to be the simplest way to get the content. So it might be, the Tai Chi Paradigm for Parkinson's, or it could be just a general Tai Chi Paradigm class that you might just want to watch and follow, because the exercises are the same. The information might be varying because I have new people, in both classes, but you can also access them. So you see the body form, because seeing is so important. You have to watch closely. So even if you tune into a video and just watch, you might just do that, just every day, and then maybe every other day do it with the class if you choose to. But once you get the knack of doing it often or regularly, then the tendency is to do it more, because you fall into a routine. A lot of times you say, well, I'm going to do it on Thursday, and then something happens and you miss your Thursday. Then you go 2 weeks, or then you go 3 weeks. But we offer this class twice a week live. So the biggest advantage is do the class live with us, and then do the archive videos another time. And as I said, you go to Calvin Chin live stream, or you go to on the YouTube and give us the thumbs up and subscribe, and you'll have access to them. And you get notifications. It'll let you know that at this time there's a class. So right now we're going to start with this. We're going to turn. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and stop. And by the way, if you're on the YouTube, there's a chat button there where you can kind of ask a question if you're having a little bit of trouble. And that chat, actually, I can answer the question that you may have right away. You don't have to wait till next class to get that answer. So this is a side bend. We're kind of opening up this, and then it straightens up and it opens up. So really we're limbering up at the body, getting range of motion, and actually learning to move in a direction. Now this is not a position typically that you would be using if you didn't do something, just so you can see that there's parts of your body that you don't move, well, at least voluntarily, or moving, in a way that's actually helping to build coordination. Now our hands go up and we reach down, and we're here. And then we move to the side, and we move to the side. We get back to center, and we start to bring our hands up with the palms up, and then press down. So what happens on the upward movement? You breathe in. What happens on the downward movement? You breathe out. And we breathe through the nose. And we exhale and inhale through the nose. Okay? And then we're going to do it again. Lift up. Go down. 1, 2, 3. To your right. 2, 3. To your left. 2, 3. Center. Inhale. Okay, so you inhale. Let's try that again. Lift up. Inhale. Go down. Turn to your right. Turn to your left. And we lift up. Inhale. And exhale. Now the hands, when they go up like this, that's setting up that exercise. But when we're doing later on the preparation, that's how the hands move the first time, you see. So bringing it up to shoulder level, that's all that is. Okay, lifting it up, and then folding and going back down. Stretch the back of the leg, turn to one side, turn to the other, and back to center, and you up, down, inhale, exhale. Okay, you see how my hands are going inhale and exhale? That, without even the stretch, is an exercise. That just standing here, you inhale and exhale. You can do it, 3 or 4 times, and that's sort of a cleansing breath, or a deeper breath than you normally would be doing. Okay, so shallow breathing isn't very good because you're not using this area as enough. The other breathing exercise we have is this, and we go up on our toes and then down. Okay, inhale, exhale, and the tongue touches the roof of your mouth. Now here, circular movements. So let the body relax and feel all of this trying to get involved with that motion. Okay, now we're going to reverse, opposite direction. And center. Okay, now cross. We're going to go to the knees, hold the kneecaps, circular movements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. Reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, and stop. Center. Okay, hands on your waist. Okay, now we're going to turn the head and we look from side to side. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. Back and forth. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. 1, 2. Now we go to the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 1, 2. So we're moving, when we move, the muscles in the neck actually get a little bit of stretch and then it unstretches. So between muscle contractions and releasing and relaxing, it's just kind of developing a motion and you get balance. So when we turn it one way, we turn the other way. So in Tai Chi, we actually do everything sort of in this balanced fashion. You move right, you move your left, you go forward, and you go back. So that's, the premise of everything that we do. We pivot and we turn, we get back to center, we pivot and we turn, and we learn how to maneuver directionally. So that's really very important. Now when we're here, okay, we're going to open our feet like this. So that spreads the feet. So you notice we're going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you learn to pivot depending if it's the ball of the foot, the heel of the foot. As simple as that is, when you were younger or when you were a child, a lot of these things you just do for fun. But the thing is, when you're starting to do this at this stage in life, you say, well, gee, I used to be able to do that, or I haven't done that for a while. It's because these kind of actions, we kind of stop using our joints this way, or we don't know that we need to do something like this. So something like what we're doing in Tai Chi Paradigm is really taking us back to some of the real basic things that the body's capable of doing, and we start to build routines. So this is really loosening up the body, we turn the waist and the shoulders a lot. Something that we typically don't do. So to turn and to release, it's kind of a contraction and a relaxation. So our body's constantly sort of cycling through this. And as we get more comfortable, we start to know how much we can turn, how much we should be turning, and how much strength we should be using. So this is something that's an experience. You begin to build that experience and understanding, building body intelligence. Okay, now we're here. We're going to close it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got this twisting in the torso. You work all these areas in the body, and that helps you free up your body so it's not so rigid. You know, the rigidity in the body really is caused by muscle contracting and tension, keeping you rigid because there's no movement. So that's one of the reasons why I try to get you to move more, because the biggest conflict of movement is tension. And tension is the biggest conflict of feeling like you're relaxing. So you could relax the head but be totally rigid. So let's understand the rigidity of the body comes from not moving. And if you can move, then let's try to drive those movements. So that's just the twisting. You know, when we move our hands like this or we move our hands like this, that's taking tension and rigidity out of the different parts of your joints. You know, rigidity is caused by tension on both sides. You have to let go of one side. This one tenses, this lets go. This side tenses, and the other side lets go. So that's the balance and movement. When we tilt our head this way, it contracts here, and then here kind of releases to this, and it releases. And actually, the vertebrae actually starts to go bend and fold. So that kind of thing is important. When we do all of these circular movements where we're moving our shoulders or our hips, that gets that in motion. Now, let's go to this position, okay, the V position, to a shoulder width stance. So this is footwork. Ball of the foot, ball of the foot, ball of the foot, ball of the foot. Okay, so that's pivoting and pivoting. That's a 90-degree angle. So learning to go from 45 and 45, corner position, look down, there's kind of a triangle where your feet meet. When you go like this, that's your square shoulder width stance. Now if I kick my heel out like this and turn this way, so you look at the movement, toe, heel. So it's a toe and heel. I go forward and back, forward and back. So that's a knee action. Okay, so between the bending here and the straightening here, the straightening here and the bending, you have a relationship and you have this back and forth motion. Okay, so that's what we're doing, but at the same time, we are shifting weight. When I go forward like this and back like this, what am I doing? I'm alternating the knees, but what happens on the bent knee side that takes up the forward position is that it starts to carry more weight. And then if I go backwards, what happens? It starts to carry more weight. So carrying weight on each leg becomes weight bearing. And then we go back. Okay. So as a weight bearing exercise, that's one of the big benefits of Tai Chi, because bearing weight, supporting weight, gets this leg to work more, or this leg to work more, to build some strength. Okay, strength with some flexibility. So where's the flexibility? You're not going down and stretching and touching your toes. The flexibility comes from your musculature releasing and allowing the body to move. So there's adaptable movement, and it's flexible in the sense that you're taking tension out of the joint. Okay, so when I turn like this and I move in this direction and I go forward and back, that relationship between the legs is balanced. The movements have to be coordinated, and you also have the balance between which muscles are releasing and which muscles are tensing, and that creates the action, creates the motion. So the more you do this, the better that relationship. If you can't build that relationship, by doing something like that, then it's probably very hard to figure out what kind of thing you would need to develop that. So this relationship is really sort of the yin and yang of the concept of balance. So you're here, and then once you're here, the front knee actually yields to the back knee. The front knee pushes, and the back knee yields. So if you understand that relation is a give and take. You take your hands and you tilt them like this, and you tilt them like this. This is two voluntary movements. But you put your hand like this, and I push this one, and I push this one, or this one collapses and this one follows, this one collapses. That's kind of yielding. Yielding is to give way. So giving way is, sort of adapting. So what we're doing when we move, with any of the movements that we're doing, is adapting to the space, adapting to a direction, and keeping that in mind. That's kind of a consciousness and a mindfulness of what we're doing. So while we're just turning like this and going forward and back, we're learning to pick up and change directions. Okay, so that's just taking you right down to a basic thing as to how do you steer yourself in a direction. A lot of times we don't understand how or why that mechanism works. Or maybe we don't think about a mechanism to do that. So if we don't pivot, how would you know how to get your foot in that direction? The only alternative is to kind of move it like this, and move it like this, and move it like this, and move it like this. So you would do what we would call like a baby step. So in order to make it more efficient, you pivot once, and then you relax your hips so the hips will allow you to face that direction. I toe out this way, I let my hips adjust. So if you were looking at me doing the form, I do that in the form when I turn. And what happens, it takes me in a direction. If it takes me in a direction, what has to happen? You have to manipulate your skeletal structure by sort of maneuvering your joints. And that's what the joints are for. They're designed to move in a certain way to get you in a direction, or if you're going to do a task, it gets you in a position to do that task, and it becomes functionality. So everything that we're doing in regard to these movements on the lower half of our body is functionality. Walking, balance, stability, directional change. These are all concepts of the mapped out road work of space that we're entering. So it could be doing the form in here, or it could be out in the street, walking and then turning the corner. You could be in a mall, you could be in a supermarket. You have to turn the corner, you have to head in a direction, you have to stand there with the social distancing. You got these things on the floor, and you have to stay in your position until it's time to move up to the next stop, and then you have to turn, go toward the machine if you're doing your own checkout, or just stand there and wait till someone else checks you out. But the thing is, we always have to be aware of where we're going. So that's a level of consciousness. And then what we're doing with our hands. One of the things that the average person does a lot of is stand there and move their hands without moving the body. Okay, so that's not really a good way of moving. The best way of moving is to move the body as a unit. So if I'm turning this way and I'm turning this way, if I'm going to move, I want to move, not just like a robot. we learn kind of like that, but we move so that there's maneuverability. You take something, you move it there. So if I take something, I go like this, that's pretty rigid. 1, 2, 1, 2. So that's like a machine. But if I go like this, if I shift and I come back, and I shift and I come back, there is a relationship between where my body went from here to there, and I'm in this position. But look, if I go from here to there, I can begin to move that leg. If I go from here to there, I can move that leg. So that becomes, something you become aware of, and then you become proficient at moving simply by learning how to fold and unfold your knees. That's one of the big downfalls of a lot of people as they age, is that the knees don't fold. They're too rigid. They don't allow you to lower your center of gravity. And this is what we're doing. When we bend our knees, when we lift up, drop our elbows and bend our knees, when we lift up, that's called preparation. So look at the third exercise. We go like this, and we go down and stretch. When I go like this, I don't bend down. I stay erect. This is working the lower part of the body. This is folding. This is stretching. So in the same similar body form, we have two different actions. So those are different actions, using different groups of muscles, using it in a different way. So that's consciousness of what you're trying to do. That becomes conscious intent. So the intent side of Tai Chi is what is different from most standard exercises. Your exercises sometimes is purely a physical thing, whereas when you're tying in, motor skill, mind-body connection, then you bring in a level of functionality, and how do we use those movements so that you can perform tasks. And that's really ultimately why we're trying to move to begin with. Why would you, how could you learn to do something specific like, some like cooking or doing dishes or even cleaning your car on the outside, you're washing. What are these motions? How do you get your body in a position? So that's really what we're learning now from really ground one. Everything that we're doing really is building off of some fundamental motions. Okay, so next movement I'm going to do are circular movements. So this is really two circles right in front of you. And then we're going to go the opposite direction. So while I'm doing the circle, you can see there, but actually my shoulder is actually manipulating, and it's moving also. And you're tracking the movement to keep within the realm of a specific plane. So when the hand does this, there's a certain amount of functionality to that. And it's a plane of movement. But because you can't really feel what that feels like until you track it, you won't know that actually you're constantly adjusting to keep that parallel plane. But it's very easy if I gave you a sponge and you put it up against the window and you did this, you could see that you can maintain the consistency of that plane. Whereas if you did this and you took your hand away and you started changing the plane of motion, if you didn't grip the sponge, you would probably drop it because it doesn't have enough pressure to sustain the plane of motion. So this virtual way of moving, trying to find the plane of movement and sustain that action so that your body starts to recognize. That's taken proprioception to another level of understanding, because now you brought in another level of sensitivity, another feeling. So as you do things, all of the things I'm talking about come into play. Feeling, sensitivity, what's it feel like to touch that? All of these things are experiences because the information you gather out here and bring it into here, experience it, and then it sends it up to here, and then it tells your body that this is what's happening, and then you just build off of that. So you do build heightened sensitivity through, intelligence. You're building body form and body intelligence. So while we're doing this, and it's so simple as it appears to be, you develop sensitivity. Now we're going to go to the big circle to increase range of motion, but everything that we're talking about applies to every movement that we're doing. Plane of movement, relative body position, and the type of strength you need to perform the action. So you're using the mind intent or the will and not strength. So that's one of the principles in Tai Chi. Use your mind intent and not strength. So when we say use your mind intent and not strength, we're not talking about zero strength. There's no such thing as zero strength. What we can translate that to is appropriate strength, the correct amount of strength. So how do you know how much that is? You don't. You don't know unless you're really creating an action that has functionality. So meanwhile, it's just kind of an abstract thing, so you really can't measure it. But in motion, the only thing that you can measure is speed, size, and direction. So you track that. This speed is how fast you would go, size, and where's it going? Direction. Right? So these ideas, if you track this concept, then you'll know kind of where you're headed. So that's upper body. If I go like this, or I go like this size, speed, and direction. Right? So those apply to everything that you do. Now, if I turn in a direction, you say, well, where's the size? Well, the size is the size of the step. The size is the amount of the pivot. Right? The direction is where your toes are going, or the direction your foot leads you. Okay, so really that's measured in everything that you do. So that's what footwork is, that's what body form is, that's what imagery is, and we do the postures. So it really supports everything that we're doing. Okay, now we're going to go to silk reeling. Now this is a coordination exercise, and we go forward and back. So the idea of this is going forward and back and separating hand. So a lot of you have been doing this for a while, probably should be doing it pretty well. Before we got hit by this pandemic, most of the people in class were picking up on this silk reeling exercise. And I know that we have several Alpha Psi programs, but the people that I was teaching in Belmont actually had this movement really coordinated, and everyone would be moving in the class as if they were training together for a long time. And that's what happens as you start to build the motion. You begin to look alike, because the motion is really this: forward position and back. You hold the ball. That's the size. So why do we all look similar once you've learned how to do it? Is because of the proportionality of the motion and the direction, the tracking of all of that starts to blend, and everybody seems to be going through the motions the same way. Now when we go over to here, on this side, we have to balance the movement, so we're going in the same format where you're going into the shoulder and the hip, the forward position and down. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and you cycle through. So continuity, that's all you do, is do it once, Do it twice. Do it 3 times. So you can just cycle, depending on what you count as 1. Maybe you started this as 1, and then you cycle through. Then 2. So that would be the second round with that movement. If you started here, then we'll go back to the front. That's considered 2, and we're starting again, and you start again. So this is how we build the cycles and build repetition. When I do repetition, it really does the same movement over and over again. And that's how we learn. As creatures of habit, that's the only way we can get our body to remember it. Inhale, exhale. So our body remembers from that experience, but it gets programmed into your system, and you do it over and over again, and eventually it just tracks it and knows. So, with the movements that we have here and the movements I have here are just positions. When we make a transition, it's really starting to define a space, and then here's that size of the circle again. Okay, let's cross the arms, bring 1 foot forward. So this is my right, it's your left, but look at the front position. You have the front arm position, and it comes in here. So look to open, and then cross to close. Open and close. Open and close. Open and close. Now let's switch to the other side. Cross again. So think of the cross hand position, it's your center line. Think of the opening movement as expansion, but in this expansion you have a side position, a fingertip, arm extended, and you have this half round here. Then when you cross again, you have your center position, and the body turns, and the leg lifts, and the hands expand. So you have it's multi-dimensional things happening. Your legs are going up and down. The torso is turning right to left. The hands are crossing and they're opening, and then they're crossing and they're maneuvering to keep the hands facing in the same direction. So there's a lot of things going on there. There's a lot of information to process, but sometimes this doesn't work so well with the body because it takes time for you to build that program, which is really working up here to figure out what it needs to do to create these actions. Okay. Now here again we're at the first movement, which is like going up and down to stretch. So this is just going up to shoulder level, and we pull the elbow back or drop the elbow and pull the wrist back, because if the elbow goes down, the hands will come back. Once it gets back, you unwind. So it becomes a circular movement. This is called preparation. You're preparing for the form, you're preparing for the movement. Okay, now next we're going to do the standing meditation. So this is holding the position. You've heard of geometry of position. So geometry of position is this rounded position. Okay, that's position 1, lower hoop. Position 2 is middle hoop, but it's shoulder level. Okay. Clear your thoughts. Okay, now we're going to do this, holding this position. Okay, bend the knees, slightly bend them. Okay, just holding, petals opened up like this. Relax. So hollow the palm a bit. Okay, now we're going to lower and straighten. So when you straighten, it's elongating the arm, but you don't lock it out so it becomes very stiff. Because there is still some rigidity here. If you were to sit here and then pick your feet up, like a gymnast, you would be able to form the L position. but that takes a bit of strength. You don't hold yourself here because it's not aligned. So when you hold yourself here, it's because you align the skeletal structure. When you do this and hold yourself, then you're using pure muscular tension to create the balance in that position, and you end up maybe, really straining yourself to do that, right? So then, from here to here, we extend the body. From here to here, we extend the body. So you have two positions. This is straightening the legs. Okay, you straighten the legs and you straighten the elbows. And here we're in the triangular position. We're just folding the elbow. And we'll bring it down. Okay? So now we're going to go forward. Okay? So we see that we did this and lift up and then cross the hands and come back. This is carry tiger to the mountain without, including the legs. So if you hear some background music, it's because it's raining like crazy outside and our roof is like an echo chamber. That's a lot of rain. Okay, so see, carry tiger to the mountain is this. So when we start here and we go forward and lift up and back, that's really what's happening when we move forward. So that actually is a transition. If we were in a position like this and we went down to the corner, this would be carry tiger to the mountain, and this would be cross hand position, and this would be raising the hand. Okay, you see how movements, when they start to blend together, starts to make a lot more sense. But if you just do the exercises and don't have this open mind about why the legs work with the hands or why the hands work with the legs, you won't be able to build this understanding. So coordination is really relationships. When the hand moves and the leg moves, we actually build that. Okay, so that's something that I find very important because, while we're moving side to side, which is this, we also have forward and back. Now, forward and back, you can go forward in the form and sit back and toe out as a mechanism to take us in a direction with some hand movements. But suppose we're walking. When we're walking, we don't actually take a step up and then twist out and take a step up and twist out. Only in the Tai Chi form we do that because we're setting up individual postures. What happens when you walk is that you're heading in a direction, so you don't want to veer off the direction that your body's going because it would be inefficient. The only time you would veer off if I want to go in this direction. Then I have to reset in another direction. If I want to head this direction, I would point with the toe. So that's, has a combination of two things. So when we're sitting here, and I do this, and I switch the other side, that's taking us from one posture to the next. Because we have some hand movements going on, we had something on the legs, then that relationship is built because you have an upper movement and a lower movement. But when we're walking forward, we're doing this. So if I do this, they're compatible in that direction, and each one of these would be one of the postures. That's a posture in walking. You have a right leg, a left leg. So those are postures. Postures are your positions when you stand in a vertical position to get, from point A to point B, essentially. So if you were to turn the corner, like we do when we turn our forward foot, that can actually take us in a direction as well. If we allow the body to face this corner, and then we head that way. But if we want to go back that way, this foot actually has to come back to here, and then we start to turn, and then we start to head in that direction. So see how important learning to steer your feet and your legs in a direction to build that. Right? So when we move like this, we did this earlier. We're going to move to here. This is sidestepping. And we're moving from side to side. Okay. So when we do this, like this drill, we're moving from side to side. So you can see why when we do these drills that we're really building a relationship. You're going out and in, out and in, out and in, out and in, out and in. Now if I go out and in, and then out and in, out and in, you can see the relationship that we're building like this. Okay, so that's one way of moving to the side. When we're doing the cloud hands, we're actually going like this. As a building of this weight shift and sustainability. Sustaining is holding and then recovering and stay holding and recovering, passing through. It's a cycle of movement creating that balance. When we go forward and back, right, this is forward, then we go back, we have that relationship. So that's really 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you see that the leg work can take you forward or backward with that same coordination. Without moving that leg and not switching or stepping through, it's just this exercise where we're just working this 1, 2, 3. I don't move this leg. That's building stability and balance and coordination. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and stop. Okay? Now, let's do this. We're going to go forward. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So right, left, right. Now here's the left. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Remember, clockwise, counterclockwise. Clockwise, counterclockwise. Clockwise, counterclockwise. Okay, so those are a couple of drills that we do. That's the forward direction, and then the lateral direction, going side to side, is this. And we cue it in, and we move like the cloud hands. Then we end up learning to sidestep, alternating the weight, because you have to get the weight over the supporting foot in order to move in a direction. So you can see the balance and motion. All right. Okay, deep breathing. We're here. Okay, so a lot of times we go through all these exercises and we don't get a lot to do with the form, but I want to actually work on a couple of postures that's important, that when we're in this V position and we step up like this, that's your neutral position, vertical elbow, and this is your horizontal position. And then we go back. Okay. Then we go forward, and then we go back. Okay. So that's standard procedure. Now we're going to switch to this side. forward, and back, right? Forward and back. So that's one of the things that we're doing, alternating the knees, alternating the hands from vertical to horizontal and back to vertical. Okay, let's switch feet again. So your left foot is forward. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now from here, we're going to step up. 1, 2, 3. So those two movements, left and right side, is beginning style. There is a little bit of a there's a little bit of a transition there that really takes you to both sides, but it has this maneuver. See that maneuver? That's the exercise that we're doing. We're standing here, we're alternating the shoulders. That's where that kind of comes in. Because maybe when you're doing the drills, you're paying attention, so focused on the movement that you don't recognize it when you see it somewhere else. And if you do recognize it, you might not be able to pick up on where it came from. So that flipping of the elbows vertical, horizontal is just a strategy to build that relationship. So now, once we get into this position and we do this, we have this movement, which is vertical to horizontal, palms down as a rollback, inside hand up as a push. Now, push is not just the hand. The push is the body going forward. The neutral is the body going backwards. Press is going forward. Roll back is to go backwards. Push is to push, and that's forward. So you always push in the forward direction, and we do it on the left side. And actually, when you start the form off, you don't do the left, but it's okay to practice the left to get familiar with it, and then this is where you are. So if you're here, and we're here, press, palms down, and out. Okay. So that's grass the sparrow's tail, right and left side. There's, those groupings of movement can be done, and you can match and mix match them, and then you can do, 2 on one side, and then 2 on the other side, just to get more familiar with, what it is. So vertical, 1, 2, 3. You might do it again. 1, 2, 3. And then we'll step up, find the other side, forward, back, and forward, and back. So we did it again. Forward, back, and forward. Now when you hook your wrists, that's usually a corner position that takes us here to single whip. So we're on this side, and we just pushed. You have this hand out and out. So this is called single whip. And the palm goes in, and the hook side goes across, and you lift the elbow. That creates that action. If I do this, it creates that action. So what is it? It's the shoulder joint, letting go. So you go from horizontal to vertical, vertical to horizontal. Horizontal to vertical, vertical to horizontal. So it's just that exchange. Happens here, happens here. So that's one action. That's all it is. It happens here. So that's cloud hands, and we're pivoting. So what is it? It's balance and motion. Okay. So all this stuff that we're doing, alleviating the tension in the chest area, the twisting and rolling from side to side to work the back, the lifting and bending to work the back of the hamstrings, the wrists to create a circle, the wrists to create the circle. the lift for carry tiger to the mountain, the infinity sign, the form, the fist, and punch. These are all part of the pattern building. While they look like patterns, they're actually postures or pieces of postures for transition. Now, learning the sequence is a lot of memory, but it's also developed by doing it over and over again. So the body starts to pick up on a strategy of how to move. The hand-eye coordination is specifically that. You see it and you recognize it over time. You see it and you recognize it over time. You see it and you recognize it over time. So when we're doing this, which is really these movements, slightly different in timing, so what do you have? This is cloud hands. But it doesn't look fluid or gentle if you don't tie it to the body. So there's passive movement there and active. So if you did cloud hands like this, it's kind of isolated, but it's also a bit more physical and rigid. Whereas when I'm doing this, the stimulation, the circulation is much, much, much different than just doing it like this, because it becomes isolated. You don't tie the two sides together. So we're constantly trying to build on how we can move more efficiently. More efficiently is something that is developed from a better understanding. So while we're learning to shift our weight and find out which leg we can move, it becomes a training. And that's what the Tai Chi training is about, from the forms down to our drills. Okay? So let's stand in this position. Okay, now if I take a right foot step forward, I'm going to be here. The next step here, and the third step here. Now if I go backwards, I sit back on my left, then I move my right, then I move my left. And then go forward. 1, 2, 3. Now you see the weight is here. That's that little relationship. Now because without picking up the foot, I consider this 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So you have a relationship. When the hand comes down, you're on this side. When you come up, you're on this side. When it comes down, you're on this side. Then we go back. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, shake it out. Deep breathing. So we just had a huge torrential rain. So listen, is it dripping over there? Is the water dripping over there? I don't know, I can hear something going chick, chick, chick. So anyways. Yeah. No, on this side. Behind the wall there. Behind it, yeah. Don't you hear it? Might be the window. So anyways, if you have questions, you can actually send them to us in a chat so that we can understand more about, or maybe something that focus on that you may be having a little trouble with. Because when I go through these classes, because it's a little different from Zoom where you actually interact with the people in the room or in the class, where I'm doing it virtually, sending it out, and I really don't see what anyone is doing. So I have to kind of try to keep track of what I'm doing to help out people that are just starting out or people that have been doing it a while. So, the information, is good, for everyone. And depending on your need, and also depending on, what you already know, it supports it, and then it allows you to improve in a different way. If you're working with the shifting of weight, or you're working with the cloud hands, it's all a process and a sustainability of getting from point A to point B, and then how does it feel and how fast you get through that motion is really part of that training. But, importantly, how the body, how much tension there is in the body really is something that has to be felt. And you might know you're tense, but, find out how it feels to let it go. Because if I'm here and it's tense, and let it go, then establish a feeling there, then you begin to recognize, what you should do to let that happen, to let it go. So, positions are positions of weakness and strength. Not all positions have strong points, and not all positions are the weakest points. So you have to find the balance between those two. Because between the balance of weakness and strength, you find the compromising transition that allows it to happen, but not totally disrupt what's going on in your movement. So, standing, feeling your position, not tilting, not arching your back, find the vertical center, and then when you shift, let it happen from the hips. Let your hips go from side to side. When you go forward, let it happen from the hips. Because if you don't let the hips adjust, then that separates the legs from the torso, and then you start to get rigid. So if you go forward and this is rigid, then it creates a total rigidness. Whereas if you go forward and you start to fold, then you have different sections that have different benefits for being in that position. Strengthening your position while not creating rigidity, that's important. So movement is the most important way of doing that. And I think we're pretty close. So if you want to see more of this content, you can review it again. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Go to YouTube. Subscribing is just clicking on that little red tab or that red word that says subscribe, and it'll give you notifications as to when we're doing the live videos and access to the content. So there's a lot of stuff to look at. Even if it's just for recreational viewing, you could see other things that other people are doing, or follow the form sequence so you can see it more. By the time you build your sequence, you have seen it so many times, you start to build that visual recognition. Okay, on that note, I'll see you next Tuesday. Stay healthy. It's pretty warm out today, and it's kind of wet. So be good. Thanks. No, I could just hear that dripping. Oh.